Alright, so we've got our Moskito here in front of us, and we're going to take it directly out of the box and connect it to the BLHeli configurator here. If you don't have it, this is a Chrome app download, free of charge. Takes a couple minutes to find and download. So we're going to go ahead and plug the USB in and also plug the battery in. So we've got the USB plugged in. I'll take you step by step. Now once we hit connect, it does give us a warning to make sure the props are off. I have the props off, and this is for safety, so it takes just a minute to take them off, and better than having any accidents and hurting yourself. So now I'm going to go ahead and connect the battery. And the battery's connected. We're going to click on read setup here. Out of the box, at least for the initial batch, it looks like everything's flashed on 16.5 BLHeli, which is fairly old. It's, it can be updated. There's a couple revisions from BLHeli, so we're going to go ahead and update all that right now. The ESC, I would suggest to not touch anything here. It auto detects for your, to make everything very easy. So all we need to do is go to 16.6. If you're watching this video at a later time, click on whatever's at the top. It could be 16.7, 16.8, however they go in the future. But for today, 16.6. It'll begin flashing all the speed controllers one by one. It'll take just a couple minutes. Alright, everything flashed just fine. Now the other thing that we're going to adjust while we're in here is these min throttles and max throttles. Because the speed controllers have D-shot out of the box, we did not need to perform any calibration within BLHeli or within Betaflight, and these values should be set to 1000 and 2000. I believe the maximum is 2020. I'm going to set it to the maximum. Once we have all 4 ESCs changed, go ahead and click on Write Setup. And that's it. We're all done with the flashing of the speed controllers, and we've successfully calibrated the minimum throttle and maximum throttle for the D-shot equipped speed controllers. Alright, now that we have BLHeli configured, we're going to need to open up Betaflight and get the Moskito bound up to the Spectrum DX7 radio, DX8 radio. To do that, we'll need to navigate to the CLI, and the command that we're going to be typing into the CLI is get spectrum. And this will pull in any values that has the word spectrum in it, which in this case is just 2 particular values. I'll go ahead and copy the value that we want, which is the spectrum sat bind. And to initiate the changes that we need to do, we need to go ahead and type in set, paste the value, and the 0, we're going to be changing this to a 9. The 9 tells Betaflight that we're using a DSMX receiver, and we'll set the binding process accordingly for the DSMX protocol. If we have a DSM2 receiver or radio, we'll need to use 5 instead of 9. Once we have it all typed out, enter, we'll go ahead and submit the change. And finally, we will also need to go ahead and type save. It will go ahead and disconnect on its own automatically. And during the next power cycle of the Moskito, the receiver will be initiated into bind mode. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect the USB, connect the USB back to the computer, and the receiver should be flashing rapidly, signifying that you are in bind mode. Once it is in bind mode, we can go ahead and bind accordingly with our radio. On the DX8 that I have, it's done by holding the bind button up at the top and turning the radio on. Alright, so we have the Moskito bound. Once bound, again, we're going to be using Betaflight to configure everything. We will want to jump immediately to the receiver tab. And out of the box, it looks like Furious FPV has done a default setup, if you will, for the Betaflight firmware. They have the channel map set accordingly. They have the serial port automatically selected for spectrum. If you do a firmware update, you may not have these values pre-programmed, so you will want to walk through and change that. But for now, this is just out of the box. No need to worry about firmware updates or anything like that. What we're going to be doing is making sure the transmitter directions that we are using correlate correctly to Betaflight. In other words, when we move the stick to the right, we want the roll to move to the right and then to the left. Just the same as yaw, when it moves to the right, the bar graph should go to the right as well. I've already pre-configured the radio here, but I will mention that the Aileron and the yaw did need to be reversed. I'll go ahead and change it back just to show you what it should not look like. So you can see I'm moving the stick to the left, the bar graph's going to the right. It will not work that way. You will need to reverse the channel. The next thing that we need to do is adjust the subtrim, and I've gotten a little ahead of myself here. I tested the model before doing the video to make sure everything was no problem and I wasn't going to run into any issues making the video. As you may see, I didn't really have to change a whole lot with the subtrim, but nevertheless, some may not. We're going to go one by one through aileron, yaw, and pitch and adjust accordingly. Now for aileron with the subtrim, what we're looking for is to have these values here be at 1500. This signifies within Betaflight that this is 100% in the middle of the travel. And sometimes, depending on the age of your radio, you may move the sticks around and these values can jump around. My DX8 is from 2013 if I remember correctly, and the last time it was sent in for service was maybe 2015. So it's 2 years old and it probably could use a tune-up, but it's still working fairly well for my needs, and I just don't want to send it in. What I'm trying to show here by moving the sticks is these numbers may jump around, and you can kind of see that here. What we first want to do is use some deadband to help ignore any issues that we have here in drifting. You can kind of notice that this box, which is supposed to be a quadcopter, I don't know why it's a box at the moment, but that's not my problem. The box is moving on its own, even though we're not moving anything on the radio. So essentially, if we are flying in angle mode or in horizon mode, your quadcopter is going to drift just like the box is moving here on its own. And for entry-level pilots, it's very frustrating trying to stop it from drifting by holding the sticks a certain way. Setting the deadband here will help us kind of ignore some issues with the radio and essentially worn out potentiometers. Some will go ahead and usually just use a value of 5 or 10. Personally, I like maxing out the values within Betaflight. As of today, they are 32 for your yaw and your aileron, and 40 for the yaw or for rudder. So we're going to go ahead and click on save. Now that we have the deadband set, oftentimes these little jumps within the center values are a lot less, and you may say arguably that mine are a little bit more stable now, and this is again why we've adjusted the deadband. So it looks like roll is still good. We're at 1500, so no need to adjust the roll or aileron in this point. Elevator does need some help. We're going to go ahead and get that adjusted over accordingly. And I'm going to settle with it right there. Some may split the hairs a little more. It's mostly stable at 1500, and I don't expect there to be any problems. I'm going to move the sticks and just see if it does anything funky, but it should stay at 1500. And it looks like it's doing that just fine. There's a little bit of jumping there, but nothing I'm concerned with. I'm also going to adjust the rudder. It's blatantly off. It's a small number, but nevertheless, it is off. We do want it to be biased towards 1500. And we can see here it's going back and forth from 1500 to 1501, whereas before it was arguably rock solid at 1499. You could leave it at 0. You could leave it at 1. I'm going to leave it at 1. Okay, now that we have that all set up, again, one last time, confirm your directions before we go on to the next step. So we've got we've got right, we've got left, we've got forward on pitch, got backwards on pitch, right on roll, or right on aileron, and left on roll. Again, I pre-programmed the radio to fly it, so I'm going to change all these values here and then explain what these values are and why they're there. Alright, so everything's back to 0 as if the radio is brand new out of the box with a fresh model. Betaflight expects these ranges here, throttle, yaw, pitch, roll, to be from 1000 to 2000 in order for everything to kind of mesh up and be kosher with how the code is written from all the developers. As you can see, we're nowhere near that, so we need to adjust the travel to get as close as possible to 1000 and 2000. You can go below. You can go to 1995 and 2005 on any of the RC commands, and you're not going to be a problem. We just need to hit that 1000, 2000 number. Some radios may not be able to do that. I'm not going to discuss how to fix that in this video. My DX8 is able to hit them. We're going to go ahead and move forward with the radio, and if any questions come up with how to fix it, if your radio cannot go that far, leave a comment in the description and we'll see if we can get that question answered. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jack this number up, and as you can see, the larger the number, the lower we get to 1000. And boom, there we go. We're at 998. That's perfect. That's exactly where we want to be at 150%. So, I'm perfect here. We're going to do the same thing on the high end. And when I discussed earlier how old my radio is, you guys can kind of see we've got the travels at 150 maxed out, and I'm not able to hit 2000 on the high. This is where that tune-in can come in from Spectrum. They'll be able to freshen up the radio, get new potentiometers in there, and make everything a lot better. Just by me pushing on the stick harder, I can hit 2000, but just with it sitting there by itself, it's 1985. Again, I'm not personally concerned with this. I'm going to go ahead and roll with it. It's a very minimal problem, especially on throttle. I'm not concerned at all with this. We're going to go ahead and do our aileron next. Similar as the throttle. We just need to hit 1000, 2000. Elevator next. And finally, rudder. Alright, so at this point, we are basically ready to go. The quad will fly. We will be adding some modes to get everything to work properly. But this is ultimately step one for any setup on any quad. So the quicker you pick up on this, your life will be a lot easier, so to speak. I'm also going to double check a couple things. We need a bare minimum of 2 channels, in my opinion, to arm the quadcopter, basically to get the motor spinning, and then to cycle through your flight modes. So out of the box, the Spectrum DX8 is set up, so to speak. It has all the channels mapped to all the switches. It's a personal preference where I would want the switches, but I have not touched anything. We're just going to roll with it how it is out of the box. So our channel 5 on the DX8 is going to correlate to aux1 within Betaflight. It's the back right switch. When I flick it up, you'll see the channel, change value. Channel 6 within the radio is here on this switch, and we have 3 different positions. And lastly, channel 7 is on this switch, particular here. Again, 3 different positions. I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of being able to use 3 extra channels for the modes. You may not be able to, so you can get creative with how you want things to be set up. Totally possible within Betaflight. The first thing that we want to do is have an arm switch set up within the radio. So we're going to go ahead and click on Add Range. Make sure that the channel we are selecting is the switch that we want it to control. In this case, aux1. And you'll notice here this little tiny yellow marker signifies where the channel is when the switch is activated. I personally like the arm switch on the back left pulled towards me. So all I simply do is just move the bar over here, anywhere in between where the yellow dot is. I can make this smaller. I can make it bigger. It does not matter. Simply as long as this yellow marker is within this yellow box, things will sync up no problem. The next thing that we're going to program is angle mode, and this is basically easy mode. Your gyros are always active. You let go of the sticks, the quadcopter is going to come back to level. You can't flip it upside down. You're limited on your angle of attack and forward flight. This is basically the learning curve, or the learning mode, if you will. We're going to go ahead and map this to aux2 channel. And again, that's on this particular switch. I would leave angle mode away from me, the switch up at the top. So this is totally fine how it's set up. The next one that we're going to be adding is horizon mode. And horizon mode is similar to angle mode in that when you let go of the sticks, the quadcopter will level itself. The only difference is horizon mode will allow you to do flips and rolls. So as soon as you hit the extremes of your radio, the quad will flip or roll, whatever you're doing there. So expect that, and try it up high on your first couple times to make sure that you have enough altitude in case you panic and something goes wrong. If you let go of the sticks halfway through the flip or through the roll, it will flip over the rest of the way and level itself. So that's kind of neat. The third thing that we're going to be programming is the beeper. And the beeper is helpful in case you're outside flying. You get it stuck in some grass or weeds and you're walking past it and you don't know where it is because it's so small. You can toggle the switch as long as the battery is still connected, hopefully, and the beeper will come on and hopefully you'll be able to track down the quad quickly. Go ahead and click on save before you do anything else. I went through this earlier and forgot to click save. Had to make all these changes again. It only takes a couple minutes, but it's just kind of annoying. The last thing that I'm going to go ahead and touch on is as you progress and you get more comfortable with FPV, a lot of the racers will go ahead and fly in acro mode. And what acro mode is all of the gyros are disabled. If you move the stick forward, the quad will pitch forward and it will stay at that angle until you change it on the stick. If you pull back and you get it level, it'll stay level. If you bump it to the right, it'll go to the right at whatever angle it stops at. And this is really useful for racing so that basically you can nudge the quad forward and you can just kind of control it around the center and you don't have to hold it forward to keep forward momentum. And how acro mode is programmed is simply by not having any of angle or horizon mode programmed. So you can see here when my switch is up, angle mode is on. When the switch is in the middle, horizon mode is on. And when my switch is down, nothing is highlighted other than arm. So this will signify that you are in acro mode. I will also go ahead and explain air mode. And oftentimes the racers will have air mode on a particular channel. And I'm going to go ahead and put it on the switch here. What air mode is that when you begin doing acrobatics, oftentimes you will want the throttle all the way at the bottom so that you're not generating thrust in certain situations. So in the event that you want to do a half flip and coast upside down for a second or two, sometimes longer, you're going to be at low throttle coasting. And air mode allows the gyro to have full control of all of the rates, even at low throttle. Roughly about a year ago, before air mode was implemented, some people were programming what's called an idle up to get a similar effect, but the rates were still very mushy. They weren't very reactive as they were when the throttle was on. And that's what air mode does. It keeps the rates fully active all the time, no matter what throttle position. So it makes everything a lot more crisp when you're doing acro or even when you're racing. Once we've got these modes set up, we are basically good to go. There's nothing else that we need to do here in Betaflight. Again, everything is pre-configured out of the box from Furious FPV. You don't need to touch anything. I've looked through the settings, and everything looks great. within Spectrum, you don't need telemetry. I don't know why they have it checked off that way. Maybe for FreeSky, I'm not certain. You can disable it if you want. You're not using it anyway. It's not going to do anything. So free up a little bit of the processing power for the gyro. But that's it. We're all good to go. I hope you guys enjoy your Furious FPV Moskito and that this video helped you guys out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. And thank you for watching.